All right, has anybody here tried partial mash? You have, okay. All right, a few of you. Now I know you said that you've at least been present or helped in an all grain. Anybody else done an all grain batch or seen how it works? You have? Okay.
Help with that.
For those of you who don't know, that's a subject for a different class, but I'll just cover it real quickly. In a nutshell, instead of using malt extract, you're using base grain, and you're extracting sugars from that grain to make it work. So that's it in a nutshell. It is subject for a whole other class. It's a whole different process. It takes a little longer, quite a bit longer in some cases, and there's other equipment needed. But there is a halfway step between extract and all grain. Now, some of you might be asking, I'm pretty happy with the beer that I'm getting out of extract. Why would anybody, move up to all grain? First of all, you have more control over the flavors and things that go into your beer. Because with malt extract, and we do have high quality malt extract, and I do a lot of extract batches, and I'm real happy with it. But you are limited to malt extract that we have, which is basically 4 or 5 different flavors: the dark, the light, the amber. We've got the Munich. But with all grain, there's things that you can do that you're just not going to get out of extract. There's flavors that you can get. For instance, if you wanted to do a Vienna lager, you have to mash Vienna malt. You're just not going to get that out of malt extract. And again, the real quick, basic way that all grain works is you're starting with all grain, not using extract, and you bring that grain to a certain temperature, usually around 155 degrees. You hold it there for 60 to 90 minutes. Then you drain the extract out. You sparge, which is where it's basically rinsing the grain with water to rinse all that sweet work out of the grain. And from that point on, it's just brew as you normally do. You boil for an hour, put your hop additions in, cool it down, put it in the bucket, and from that. But there is a halfway point, and that's doing a partial mash. I was just talking with this gentleman in the front row here earlier about how it works. And it's something that you can do that really adds only an hour to your brew day. And you will see an improvement in flavor, color, clarity. And now, I'm assuming everybody here has brewed with specialty grains, where you take those in a bag and you steep them for 30 to 45 minutes, right? This is basically, you're just adding some base malt to that. Now, base malt is, we're talking about 2-row, 4-row, there's a bunch of different kinds. But these are malts that you're going to be able to extract sugars from. So, there's a couple benefits to that. You're going to use less malt extract. For example, let's say you're looking at a recipe kit that typically has that 6-pound jug of liquid malt extract, maybe some dry malt extract in there. If you're going to do a partial mash, it's real easy to formulate a recipe from any of our recipe kits to do a partial mash. You just cut the amount of malt extract in half, and you replace that with the commensurate amount of base grain. You add your specialty grains. Okay, so if you've got a recipe kit that's got a 6-pound jug, cut that down to the 3.3-pound jug, add 4 pounds of 2-row to your specialty grains, and now instead of steeping that for 30 to 45 minutes, you're going to steep it for 60 to 90 minutes. And so basically all you're going to do is you're going to bring, and I go through all the proportions and stuff in the handout, so I won't go over all that. It's basically 1 quart per pound of grain, 1 quart of water. So how you would start, okay, so we've got our ingredients, so you would start by figuring out how much water you're going to need. So you've got 4 pounds of grain, you're going to need 4 quarts of water, so on and so forth. So you start with that, you bring that water to about 170 degrees, because the idea is when you put the grains in, the grains are at room temperature, that's going to cool the temperature of the water down. The temperature you're aiming for is 155 to 158 degrees. So when you put the grains in, take a temperature reading. If it's too hot, put some cold water in there. If it's too cold, then heat it up a little bit until you get to that 155 to 158. Once you get to that temperature, then you're just going to want to hold it there. Put a lid on your kettle or whatever you're going to do, and just hold it at that temperature for 60 to 90 minutes. Now what happens during that time is the sugars are being extracted from the grains. So now after, and you can do this with, we have, I forgot to grab them, but we have grain bags that are, you know, pretty big, like this big, that you can fit 4 to 8 pounds of grain in. It's a little heavy when doing a big mash like that, but it'll work with, you know, if you've got a decent sized kettle. So after that sits for the 60 to 90 minutes, then we're out of the big, we do have a larger colander like this that fits real nice on top of your kettle, but a lot of people move it up to partial mash, so we're sold out of them at the moment. But basically, after that mash time, you would pull the bag out, put this colander on your brew kettle, set the bag of grains in there, and let as much of it drain out as you can. Now, meanwhile, while your grains were mashing for an hour, while they were sitting there at 155, 158, in a separate kettle, you should have some more water that you're going to bring up to 170 degrees. Now, as far as figure, I go through the proportions and all that in the handout, but you're going to want to have enough water in there so that at the end, after you pour this water over the grains, what you're doing is you're rinsing all the sugar out of there, that you end up with enough in your brew kettle like you normally do when you start your extract boil. So that's kind of how you figure out that quantity. But anyway, so you take that water that you've heated to 170, and basically I've got one of those you know, glass liter jugs, and I just take and pour it over the grain bag. And the goal is just to rinse as much of that sugar out of there as you possibly can. And at that point, then you just brew as you normally do, just like you're used to. So that's it in a nutshell.
So the specialty grains are in there as well as the base grains. They have the word.
Correct. His question was, so you've got your specialty grains and everything in there along with your base grains, and that is correct. When you do an all-grain batch, all your grains go in there together. You're not doing the specialty grains in the bag and steeping them. They just all go into the mash. So the same concept here. When you do a partial mash, you're going to throw your base grains as well as your specialty grains in there. Sure.
So after you sparge it, do you give it like a big old squeeze to try to get more out of it, or?
There's a couple of schools of thought on that. Some brewers believe that if you squeeze the bag, that you're going to get some tannins out of the grains, which are going to impart harsh bitter flavors on the beer. There's an element of truth to that, which is why, you know, you want to sparge as much as you can to get all that out of there. So I would suggest against it. I've done it just to see if I would get harsh tannin flavor. I didn't really notice much of anything, but you know, you can experiment yourself and see what you think. You're going to get plenty out of there without squeezing the bag. I mean, the amount that you're going to get in addition, you know, by squeezing it is not that much. So I'd say the cons outweigh the pros in that case. So any other questions on partial mash?